It's Frankenstein. Welcome back to Tie That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy, Frankenstein.
Call me Igor.
You guys probably won't be able to tell what we're going to talk about today.
Cool.
I wish we could do like real-time trivia and then just do those two quotes and then see if they if they could guess what the movie is.
I think everybody would get it. My favorite Mel Brooks movie, Young Frankenstein, and Mel Brooks has a huge catalog and many fantastic movies. But I saw Young Frankenstein when I was a kid. I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen, and my love of that movie has never dimmed over the many years since.
Interesting. What
I fell in love with Terry Garr when she showed up in
she was
Mr.
so cute.
Mom. I was like, like my little teenage self instantly got a little roused.
Did you see?
And it's because of this movie. It's because of Young Frankenstein.
Did you see this movie because it passed the parents clean list?
It was PG, so yeah. And PG movies, there's this really arbitrary line, and somehow PG and R defines that line. I don't know why God's rating system is PG and R. But that was always the line.
Yeah, because they talk about the monster's dick throughout the whole movie.
No, he's Von Schnucker. He has an enormous Von Schnucker.
Did you rent it or did you go see it at the theater? How did you see it?
Oh no, I never saw it at the theater. I think we rented it at some point. Now my mother had seen it at the theater and she thought it was really funny. She had a thing for Gene Wilder. She loved Gene Wilder. So pretty much any movie with Gene Wilder in it, we would see. So she asked me if I had seen it. I said no, I hadn't. And so she rented. She'd seen it before, but she rented it and we watched it together.
So this is the first time I've seen this movie. I watched it right before we came on, and it's interesting that you said that this is your favorite Mel Brooks movie. And maybe, I wonder if I watched it when I was younger, if I would have like a bit of a nostalgia, and if I was in that comedy zone. The comedy is timely in a way, and so if you watch something in that time, it's kind of cutting edge, it's funnier, because this was before Airplane and things like that, right? Because there was
Airplane's
some
not Mel Brooks.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is like this, there were some farcical type things within this that was kind of poking fun at the genre that I then see movies that just lean way into it. But I feel like this was kind of starting that, right? Because this is post Blazing Saddles.
It was a more subtle version of it.
Yeah.
And it actually has a story. A lot of those sort of farcical movies don't have a story. They're just a series of skits that poke fun at something. This actually has a story. It's much more a comedy than anything else, but it's still, there's a story to it, Yeah. For me, it's this movie and Blazing Saddles are the two best Mel Brooks movies.
Because for me, what I know of Mel Brooks is Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs. And there was something about Blazing Saddles, and I saw it when I was really young, but there was something about Blazing Saddles that felt aggressive and subversive, and it was like, will offend you, but you're laughing that you're like, despite it. And like, and that, that kind of comedy is my favorite. That really, I find that, hilarious. And Blazing Saddles, even though I haven't seen it in a long time, and when you read reviews of it, and I know it's really problematic, but that type of Mel Brooks is, I think, my favorite. And I, watching this movie tonight, I'll just go through my first impressions. My first impressions were the type of comedy wasn't my favorite. It was kind of even like how we talked about Elf a little bit. Like it was very kid friendly, like very kind of sweet in a way. But I can tell when something is well done, and it's very well done. But what surprised me is the story within itself is actually quite moving and great performances. And the story, it had a great structure and framework that kind of held the farce, and the story works on its own. But this wasn't my favorite Mel Brooks.
Well, that just goes to show you're bad and wrong.
I agree.
Your tastes are deeply suspect.
That just goes to show I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, go watch Scary Movie 4.
Joseph, no, I'm not a Scary Movie 4 guy either. But Joseph, is this your favorite Mel Brooks movie?
Yes, as well. I grew up loving this one.
You like it over Spaceballs and Blazing Saddles?
Definitely over Spaceballs. Honestly, when I saw Spaceballs in the theater, I was underwhelmed. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy it, but it was kind of like Robin Hood Men in Tights, where it was just trying way too hard.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about Young Frankenstein, is that it I didn't feel as though it was really going over the top. And then of course just the cast. It just has so many great actors in it.
Yeah, Gene Wilder's fantastic. Terry Garr's great in it.
Gene Wilder's very good.
Peter Boyle as the monster is awesome.
I'll say this too, like, I guess, maybe I'm a closet not Mel Brooks fan, because I didn't love Spaceballs either. I didn't like the comb in the desert with the thing and the Schwartz be with you. Like, I watched it and I was amused by it and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't longing to watch it again. Did you ever see Life Stinks?
I think so, but I don't really have a strong memory of it.
There was some funny stuff in that. There's some funny stuff in that. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about you and your first impression of this movie and why you liked it so much.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very funny movie. I think Gene Wilder's fantastic in it. It's one of my favorite performances of his. I think the setup of a comedy. I mean, there's been plenty of comedies that took place in a horror universe. I mean, Laurel and Hardy Meet the Mummy was 30 years before this movie, so that has happened before. But I think what Mel Brooks did with Young Frankenstein is really kind of perfected the balance. Like, Laurel and Hardy Meet the Mummy doesn't feel like a mummy movie. It feels like a Laurel and Hardy movie that the mummy shows up in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Young Frankenstein, it feels like a Frankenstein movie. It's got the set design feels like a Frankenstein movie. The way the story plays out definitely feels like a Frankenstein movie. But they find humor in that rather than throwing like over the top farce over and just jamming Frankenstein in the background. And I really appreciate that about it, even as an adult when I watched it later, the sort of the more sophisticated storytelling that Mel Brooks is doing in this. And it's just incredibly quotable. What was the name on the brain? Abby. Abby who? Abby Normal.
I will say, when we go through, I can tell you all the times I laughed out loud. And I think that was one of my favorites, is when he took the brain.
Abby Normal.
Said, Abby something. Abby Normal.
See?
Yeah, that was funny. And surprisingly, too, what caught me off guard is when the monster comes alive and is groaning, and he goes, "Oh, how's the dessert?" And he goes, "Mrr." And he goes, "Yeah, I agree, it's very good." And then he goes, and like, so certain things like that really cracked me up when I wasn't expecting it.
There are a few sort of like chunks of the movie that I think are just nonstop awesome. Like when the monster goes to visit the blind monk, played by Gene Hackman.
Oh, that was great. Yeah,
that whole sequence of the blind monk and the monster was fantastic. And Gene Hackman is great. Like, wonderful little cameo here, right? Where he just shows up for one scene.
And how do they, who is somebody who's famously selective and crotchety? Like, how do you get Gene Hackman to come in and do that one cameo and just nail it?
You want to know why? He actually wanted to be in the movie. He asked to be in the movie because
really?
He wanted to do a comedy role.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a great moment when he lit his thumb, like thinking it was a cigar and everything. That also, it was very well done. It was very well shot, like way more sophisticated than Blazing Saddles. Like the camera angles, the movements, the black and white. It had a very specific, it was going back to, what did they call those old monster, like banger movies, or like the old Hammer, the
Hammer films. No, the Hammer films are different. The Hammer films were European. This was much more of the this was old Universal.
Mm-hmm.
So the old Universal films, like the Frankenstein and Dracula, those were all Universal films. The Hammer films were like the weird 60s European monster movies. They're different.
Oh, different studio things. So what
Hammer was a studio in Europe that made those movies.
That made those movies. So the monster movies from Universal, is that like where Dracula and Frankenstein and those came from? Because did you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
I did. Yeah, I read it in high school. What
did you think about it?
I think that it is incredibly. I don't love it as a novel, but I think it's incredibly important for a lot of reasons. I think when Shelley wrote that, she was opening the door to a genre of fiction that she was kind of the first one through that door. And I think she is celebrated for that reason, and I think rightly so, because Frankenstein does some things with with fiction, creating a genre that I think are pretty spectacular. And what's amazing about it is, like, anybody who writes fiction now can easily see the shoulders of the giants we're standing on.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. Like, I look down, I see Bradbury, I see Heinlein, I see the greats whose work I am influenced by in my work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can see them right there. They're so close. I look at Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein. I'm like, whose shoulder was she standing on? There was nobody who was doing anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, where did that come from?
Yeah, it's like Marlon Brando being Brando without the benefit of Brando. Because after Brando came on the scene,
then everybody was being Brando.
Then everybody had Brando to like, this is how real and honest and true this work can be. Like, everything was presentational before, and everything that's like, oh God, wait a minute. This is the first time they saw something like that. So then it just impresses you so much with Brando. But I have the same feeling that you have when I was really excited to read the novel, and I appreciate how important it is and what it brought. And there's certain things in the novel, like I felt like when he was studying the forbidden medical science, and I thought that was all spooky and interesting. That was more interesting than when the monster came alive. I felt like the protagonist was a bit passive, going forward. It just didn't hold me, but I am a fan of what it inspired, of what it paved the way for, what broke through. And I actually, the reason I asked you about the novel is because on its face, even though I wasn't crazy about this movie, it's probably in my top Frankenstein movies within itself. Like, I enjoyed the Frankenstein story of it.
Yeah. And
I there were some parts that really got me laughing. Like, even the putting on the Ritz thing, it's like, you see that, and in the beginning you're like, okay. And then as it goes on, you start to laugh, and you're like, okay, I get, it's funny, I get it.
Even as a kid, that wasn't my favorite part of the movie. My mother thought it was really funny. I didn't.
What were your highlights? Funny. What were the things that you were like, that you quote the most, that you think about the most? Like, what are some of the funniest things?
Anytime it's Gene Wilder, Terry Garr, and who's the actress who plays Frau Blucher?
Cloris Leachman.
Cloris Leachman. Anytime the three of them are in a scene, I love that scene. I thought the three of them were fantastic.
Wait, he played the one that plays Igor?
No, Cloris Leachman, the one who plays Frau Blucher.
And that the whole like horses thing, and like when they say her name. But I thought Igor was he made me laugh the most. I thought he was funny.
Well, I was going to say, anytime the three of them were together, I thought their three-way interactions were always fantastic. Right. And then by himself in any scene, Marty Feldman is just genius.
Yeah.
Like, Marty Feldman can be doing anything and he's funny.
Right.
Like, there are plenty of scenes in that movie where everybody sort of leaves and he's just kind of left behind and he's just sort of looking around, and that's funny.
Yeah.
Like, his sort of reaction to the scene that just happened is funny. Yeah. So Marty Feldman by himself, always funny. And then that three-way with Frau Blucher and Frankenstein and I forget Terry Garr's character's name.
There's some performers that are just so special and unique when you see them. There's nobody like them. And I remember the first time I saw Gene Wilder, it was in the Warren Beatty Bonnie and Clyde movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was that Peckinpah? Did Peckinpah do Bonnie and Clyde?
I think Peckinpah did do Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, I think he did.
It's very Peckinpah-esque.
Yeah, it has that like that late '60s, real. Yeah, I think it had to be Peckinpah, and I think it was after the Wild.
You can tell it's a Peckinpah movie because no one ever gets shot once.
No,
if you get shot, you get riddled with bullets.
Yeah, at the end when they just fucking frag Bonnie and Clyde, you look at it and you're like, yeah, but did you see the actual video? The photograph, like that's what happened in real life.
No, they got BARs out of an armory, and that's a 308 fully automatic rifle. I mean, that thing will go through a tank. Yeah. So yeah, they
weren't taking any chances.
No.
But anyway, Gene Wilder had a scene in there where I think they commandeered his car, and I remember him sitting in the back, and I remember watching this, and this was before I've seen anything that he's done before. I think my dad was a big fan of the Bonnie and Clyde. He was a Peckinpah guy. But I remember watching this movie and then seeing him and always like my attention always went to him. Yeah. And I was like, oh, he's got such an interesting, vibe to him, a unique presence. And then whenever I saw him again, I think I saw, obviously I think I saw Willy Wonka next. That was the next Gene Wilder thing I saw. And then I remember I loved the movie with him and Richard Pryor. Was it called Silver Streak or Silver?
Silver Streak is the
Silver
movie
Streak.
They did a bunch of movies together, a bunch.
Yeah,
Silver Streak is great. Yeah.
Silver Streak was, and so then I was just always, he was one of those guys that I'd gravitate toward, that I thought was really funny and really interesting and different. And even in Blazing Saddles, like his role he has, he's always, it's hard to put a finger. That's why he was so great in Willy Wonka. Right, because Willy Wonka is somebody that's he's an anomaly. He's unlike anybody that exists. It's like and
Willy Wonka needs to have a little edge to him, right?
Yeah.
Or at least the version that we got with Gene Wilder has some edge to him. There's that scene on the boat that everybody mentions. It gets really scary, where the stuff is flashing by and Gene Wilder is saying that weird rhyme. You feel a little scared. He's a little scary in that moment, right? And Gene Wilder he can play goofy and he can play farcical and all that stuff. He can do all of that. But there's these moments where he just has some edge to him, where you're like, maybe this guy's crazy.
There's definitely moments where it's like he's barely hanging on. And I think he would have been a great horror villain. I think he would have been a great, somebody that was, warm and sweet and pull you in. And then there's just another side to him. I'd have loved to see him do that.
And so in this, he works so well because he needs to come across as a little naive, right? At first, when when he gets picked up when they meet him at the university and he's denying his ancestors.
You thought he'd come off as naive?
Well, yeah. I mean, when he's riding on the carriage with Igor, and Igor's kind of making fun of him with the whole werewolf, their wolf, like that kind of thing, and he just seems like he doesn't quite know what's going on.
Yeah,
But by the time he gets into the work, that moment when he slams the book down and goes, "It could work," then this madness comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And for the next chunk of the movie, he seems like a crazy person.
Yeah.
And because he's Gene Wilder, he's able to pull off both versions.
Yeah.
He's been able to pull off the version that's a little naive and in self-denial, and then flip the switch and be the guy who has fucking lost it and is going crazy and is creating a monster.
See, I felt like in the opening scene and the kind of the edge we're talking about, when he said his name Frankenstein, he turned around and was like, "It's Frankenstein." It was played for laughs, but there's a suppressed anger in there. There's a rage, and you see there's a shame that he felt.
I mean, he stabs himself in the leg. He's so angry.
Yeah, because he's not taken serious.
Yeah.
And so there's this anger. And then when he goes and discovers the books and everything, you could tell he always truly believed, like he wanted that to be, and he wants to redeem his name and be taken seriously. And the edge that he has plays very well into that.
Yeah. The sequence where he is trying to tame the monster and goes into the monster's cell is another one of those ones where he flips a switch, because he goes in and he's trying so hard to be sweet and caring and reach the monster with his compassion. And then there's that moment where he realizes it's not working and he wants to get out. And he's told them not to let him out. And you just see the dial. You see the dial turning up on the crazy as he's like trying to get them to let him out, and they're not letting him out.
But that I would probably say that was when I laughed the hardest, because he has that whole speech at the end. This is my life to science, and this is what I'm going to do. And then he goes in, and the guy goes "Urgh," and shakes the chains, and he goes, "Hey guys, remember what I said earlier? Let me out." And it just slowly starts building and then going. I feel like, actors always steal from each other. There's a scene in The Shining where Jack Nicholson is locked in the his wife locks him in the
freezer. Yeah.
Is it the freezer or the cupboard?
It's a freezer.
In the freezer?
She locks him in the freezer.
She locks him in, and he's like, he goes to he's like, "Hey, what you doing?" And then he's like, "Let me out," and then he just escalates up or whatever, and it's like there's like a little bit of that escalation within the. It reminded me of the Shining scene. What is it about Terry Garr that's just so pleasant to see on screen? And I'm not talking about she's obviously. I'm not beyond anything beautiful or sexual, or there's just something about her presence that I just love to see her in films. I love to.
I don't know what it is, but she has this enormous sort of calming charisma.
Yeah.
Where you see her and you just want to hang out with her.
Yeah.
Like not, it's not even a creepy weird thing. It's not even like, oh, I really want to date Terry Garr. It's like if I met Terry Garr, I just want to buy her coffee and sit and have a conversation.
Yeah,
and she seems there's something about her, right?
I just instantly like her. And then even when you think about Tootsie, like her and Tootsie, you really empathize with her and don't like Dustin Hoffman in the way that, he's treating her and the way he's doing things. And she's so vulnerable, and there's something, she's vulnerable, but like there's a kindness and a class. She has like a class or style or sweetness to her.
I get what you're saying. There is something classy about her. I mean, even in Mr. Mom, where she's gone back to work and she's in the meeting with all the executives. She's just cleaning up the table, and he's like, "We have people who do that," but it's just that she's not even thinking about it. It's just like, "Oh, there's a mess. I should probably start cleaning this up." When she does it, you believe it, you buy it. Like that, she just seems like the person who would do that.
When is the last time you've seen her? I haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, she hasn't done a lot of stuff recently that I've seen either.
What was the movie that she was in? And there was like John Lovitz. John Lovitz he was from another planet, and he had this fascination with her. And he came and kidnapped her, and then her husband, who's the guy that's been the Ferris Bueller's the principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, has to go after her and save her.
I'm looking for it. We talked about that in the past because weren't they like really dumb?
Yeah, and it's a dumb planet, and so
planet.
And what's his name? Not Lyle. The comedian.
Mom and Dad Saved the World.
Mom and Dad Saved the World. Have you seen this, Ty?
I haven't. I heard it.
What's
wasn't
the
very
comedian's name in there?
John Lovitz.
John Lovitz. Yeah, it was John Lovitz. So the funniest part of this movie is it's a dumb planet. And John Lovitz is the ruler of this planet, and he falls in love with Terry Garr, and he ends up kidnapping her and taking her back to the planet. And the husband has to go to the planet and save her. But so, like, to give you an example, they throw a pick me up grenade, and so they throw it into there's a whole army of people that are coming after him, and they throw a pick me up grenade and they throw it in there, and then one guy walks up and he looks at it. And he picks it up and it vaporizes him, and then the grenade drops, and the whole army, they're just standing around each other, and then it shows time passed, and then they go back to the war, and it's like half the amount of the army, and they're all just standing around picking it up and getting vaporized. And it's probably a terrible movie, but I saw it when I was a kid and it made me laugh.
I don't know where to go from there.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, she did kind of retire from acting. But I did not realize that she was having her first symptoms of MS when she was filming Tootsie.
Oh, wow.
She had a brain aneurysm in 2006. She recovered from it, but I think since then she's kind of retired from acting. But
I'm glad she retired on her terms, but that's too bad. I didn't know she had MS.
When at the end, what's the actor's name that played Frank the monster? Is it
Peter Boyle?
Peter Boyle. Peter Boyle had a really great speech at the end. That was a great moment. But I didn't fully understand. So did Gene Wilder, who plays Frankenstein, give him some of his intellect?
Yes. That's the idea. Is he gave the monster part of his brain so that the monster could, be smart.
Communicate. And then he talks about love and wanting to be loved and those things. And then how did Gene Wilder get his Frankenstein or whatever? What do you call it?
Are you asking me for the scientific explanation for that?
No, but I don't remember I didn't see the dick change. How did that happen?
Did you want to?
Maybe. I mean, you weren't a little curious?
It's okay to be curious, Wes.
That was a great scene at the end when he was like, so you got his brain, and what did you get? And then he's like, looks at the thing.
What did you get from him?
What did you get from him?
Well, and then she starts singing.
Yeah. Moon River. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go to the top 5?
I want to talk about your terrible taste in movies because you don't love Young Frankenstein.
Yes. I didn't say I didn't like it. I mean, I enjoyed the time watching it, but I didn't love it like you guys love it, or like when I read online about it. Like, people, this is a beloved movie, and maybe if I saw it, when I was a kid at that time or whatever, I would have loved it. But I watched it, and I laughed out loud a couple times, whatever. But I was mildly amused. I wouldn't go back to see it. And I know that's sacrilegious and everything, but I just have to be honest. I can tell when something's well done, and it's a very well-made movie. The story works in itself. I was moved at the end. It had a great moment at the end, and I thought, I enjoyed it. I'm glad we saw it. I'm glad we talked about it.
I think you need to let the boys see it, because for Ty and I, we saw it when we were younger, and I don't know. I mean, obviously you've seen it now. The jokes like would you like a roll in the hay? The knockers, all that stuff. I mean, I think your boys will be cracking up.
They would love that. They would love the knocker thing and stuff. See that, like the whole secret door sequence and things like that. I watch it, but that's not my go-to. That's not my fun. That's not the thing that really makes me laugh. And then the knocker stuff and all that. And you're like, it is very childlike and sweet in its comedy, but that's not my favorite comedy.
I think though, like when comparing it to Blazing Saddles and a lot of the others, I still feel as though it's subtle, but it has aged well.
Yeah.
Especially in comparison to all the other stuff.
Yeah. But the thing is like I love Scrooged, right? The Bill Murray thing. Not everybody loves that movie. Not everybody thinks this is funny.
I think your humor tends more toward like the mean humor.
No, we talked about this. I don't like mean humor.
No, but Scrooged is mean. It's a mean movie.
It's a beautiful movie. It's a feel good at the end.
Yes, it builds up to a beautiful end, but it's a mean movie. There's a lot of cruelty in the humor, and I like cruel humor, so I'm not bashing that. My favorite cartoon is Rick and Morty, which may be the cruelest thing ever put on television.
But didn't we talk about not liking mean humor, and we went through the reason why like a while ago, or like things that?
No. There's two different things. There's movies where the cruelty is you are invited to mock the characters on screen, where characters are put on screen and the audience is told to mock them because look how pathetic they are.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of cruelty. What I'm talking about, and neither of us really like that. What I'm talking about is where the humor comes from the characters being mean to each other.
Oh yeah.
And Bill Murray is such a dick in Scrooged. And you like that. You like watching Bill Murray be a dick.
That's funny.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I like watching people be a dick too. So I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying though that most of the time when you tell me a movie you really like, it tends to be that kind of movie.
That's a great distinction. That makes sense because when Bobcat Goldthwait or whatever gives him an idea and he calls security and gets him thrown out and he's like looking at his watch or timing, whatever. And then in the end, he's like, that's a great idea. And like, that whole sequence is hilarious to me.
Now, there was some really cool trivia that I found out about this movie. The props that were designed for Young
from
Frankenstein.
The original movie?
Well, no, it was they actually employed one of the guys who worked on the original Frankenstein film.
They got like the same prop master.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And then Terry Garr actually auditioned for the Madeline Kahn role, and I guess Mel Brooks always wanted Madeline Kahn for the role, but she didn't want to do it. And then finally she said yes. And then like essentially Mel Brooks went to Terry Garr and he said, "Hey, so can you learn an accent?" And so she had a day. And supposedly she based her performance and her accent off of Cher's hairdresser or something, I guess, who had a very strange accent and all that stuff. But
you could tell she had a day because she just changed her W's to V. She's like, what?
Yeah, I think Mel Brooks is right in the casting there. I think she would not have been good in the Madeline Kahn part. I think Madeline Kahn has this Ice Queen coldness to her that absolutely worked for that part. And I don't think Terry Garr is capable of Ice Queen coldness. I don't think she has it in her.
I was rooting for Gene Wilder to end up with Terry Garr, where if it was reversed, I wouldn't be rooting that. Yeah.
But I still love that scene with Madeline Kahn with the hair. And she's all ready to go.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
And then, of course, at the end, she's the sex crazed monster, and Peter Boyle is got the glasses, and he's all kind of like, yeah, okay. So, shall we get to the top 5?
Sure.
I guess you can guess what we're doing.
Are we doing top 5 Von Schnookers?
Von Schnookers. That would be an interesting one. We could always do that on the B-side.
Well, I mean, Blazing Saddles obviously is top 5. And for me, Young Frankenstein is top 5. I did not like Dracula Dead and Loving It. Do not think that's a good movie. High Anxiety I like. Do you like High Anxiety?
I'd never seen that.
It's a Mel Brooks take on
Vertigo?
yeah, but also on just in general on Alfred Hitchcock. It's Mel Brooks doing a Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Is it funny or is it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a comedy.
Okay. It's kind of like what Frankenstein we just saw.
I'm also a big History of the World fan. I have brought you these 15 crash 10 commandments.
I still love Gregory Hines in the joint.
Yeah. What about you, Wes? What are your top ones here? I mean, The Producers is very famous as being a classic. I don't love The Producers as much as everybody else does, but it's a very well-respected movie.
Yeah. I don't want to piss off our patrons, but I don't love a lot of these movies.
Yeah, I think you're just not a Mel Brooks fan.
I think I'm not. History of the World, I laughed at that, and I liked I liked Young Frankenstein. I didn't love it. I liked it. It just wasn't my type of. Oh, you know what? I remember liking Life Stinks when I was a kid, watching it on HBO.
There you go. Life Stinks.
Yeah, Life Stinks. Blazing Saddles.
Of the remaining ones, what would be your number 5? I would go with High Anxiety, but you haven't seen High Anxiety.
I haven't seen it.
Robin Hood Men in Tights makes me chuckle, but yeah, I don't have any belly laughs in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Yeah. Spaceballs has a few really funny movie moments in it, but it has a lot of sort of dead spots too.
Which ones are those for you? Spaceballs, those funny moments.
I off the top of my head, I can't even remember specifics. I just know when I watch it, there are certain moments that happen in the movie where I laugh.
Yeah.
And then there's long stretches where I don't.
I'll make a case for To Be or Not to Be just because it had Anne Bancroft in it also. I grew up with that and I really enjoyed it. It was funny.
I don't remember that movie yet. I don't even know if I've seen it.
I think too when Spaceballs came out, I'm still in my, I was deep in my Star Wars love affair. So when I'm seeing,
you didn't like they were making fun of Star Wars?
I didn't like they were making fun of Star Wars. And then also when I see spaceships and shit, I want a different movie. I don't want when you get my mouth all wet, all ready for some lemonade, and you know what I'm saying. And because in the beginning you see like the parody of like the Destroyer, and it just keeps going and going and going, and then at the end it has like "Don't Break for Me," whatever, and I'm just like, that's just you're putting graffiti on something that's priceless, like a priceless statue. It's just
you're such a nerd.
Yeah. It sounds as though High Anxiety is going to go
for
there.
For me, High Anxiety would be the best of the rest.
Wes
hasn't seen it.
Abdicating. Yeah. It's been ages since I've seen High Anxiety, and I definitely want to go rewatch that one.
It's basically Young Frankenstein except for Alfred Hitchcock instead of Universal horror films. He does a very good job of aping what Alfred Hitchcock did, and then showing the funny parts of it, showing the humor sort of hiding in it.
And
so it's the same kind of thing.
To Be or Not to Be is a remake of the classic To Be or Not to Be, where it's the acting troupe and the Nazis in Poland. Okay. But it had a lot of actors. I forget who's Tootsie, the father. Ron Perlman talked about how he broke down telling stories about the war.
Oh, he's awesome.
He's that epitome of that character actor.
Yeah,
that
he used to be a Marine.
Charles Durning.
Yeah,
it had Tim Matheson in it. It just had a really fun. I mean, it was a light movie, but it was like Mel Brooks really chewing the scenery. And the best part of it is that Anne Bancroft, who I did not know at the time when I saw this, was his actual wife, and they're like always fighting and going at each other, and like when they're showing the poster for their upcoming play, and she's saying, I don't mind that your credits are front and center, I mine being lower is you're fine, but in parentheses he like puts his wife's name in parentheses because he wants to be the star so much.
So you were a big Mel Brooks fan there, Joseph, huh?
Well, growing up, I think it's a time period thing. It's like for me, that's why I did not like Spaceballs or Robin Hood Men in Tights. When you were growing up, those were the ones that you had, and you really didn't get exposed to these. And I think the reason why I was exposed to it was that my uncle had a Laserdisc player, and he would make me all these tapes. Like, I don't think if without him, I probably would not have seen Young Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what was the patron? They went Spaceballs and the producers, but 3 out of 5. That's what it usually is.
Yeah, 3 out of 5.
And I can see an argument for the producers. I don't think the patrons are wrong about that one. I mean, the producers is a classic for a reason. And there's a reason it's been remade 1,000 times.
Thank you guys for hanging out. We love you. We miss you. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for picking out these movies. We had a good time watching them. Do you want to say anything to the lovely listeners?
Yeah, I'm going to say, to all the listeners, please do me a favor. Comment in the comment section your anger toward Wes for being so wrong about this movie. Explain to him in great detail why he's so wrong. I would really appreciate it if you do that. I want him to really feel the anger from the audience on this one.
This is funny because it's like, it's not that it's saying I like the movie, I don't love it, and it's like, you are so wrong.
You need so to love
wrong.
This.
You need to love it
so wrong
with the heat of 1,000 suns.
Yes, and I want our 11 listeners, because I thought we were up to like 12, but I think we just lost one because you're so wrong about this. I think the 11 remaining listeners to just really let you have it in the comments.
This is when we go into the negatives. Like, we're probably doing, like, there's negative people listening to this.
Yeah.
No podcast has pulled that off before. There's been 0 listeners.
One dude who was listening threw his laptop out the window of his apartment. And it just shattered in the street.
There's been 0 listeners, but nobody's achieved negative listeners. Yeah. We are the only podcast to do that, and we're here to set records. Oh, also, too, in the comments, I want to know, we were talking about this that Joseph probably went cut out, but I want to know what movies you hate. What movies do you love to hate with the passion of 1,000 suns? Like, what movie pisses you off when it's there? That the fact that
that's a good one, because we do want to try and do a movie that we both just really hate.
And you can't, and Ty made a great point earlier, you can't hate it because it's a bad movie. It has, like, there needs to be deeper reasons from it. Because if it's a movie that everybody hates, like he gave an example of Battlefield Earth, then it's like, yeah, we all get it. But what is that movie that was made that's just an innocent little movie, but you hate it for some reason?
Yep. All right. You should probably go home now.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.